I was, when I was in 8th grade, fall of 8th grade, I was about 100 pounds. And all of 5'2". I was little in 8th grade. So small. It was awkward. I told you not to use that. So I was in 8th grade. I was a little guy, and I was on the football team. And in 6th grade, I was about the size as everybody else. So I was the running back in 6th grade, and I loved it. And then 7th grade, everybody got a little bit bigger, and I didn't really get any bigger. And 8th grade rolled around, and I still didn't really get any bigger. So I was now like shrimpy kid. And so I was playing those positions, and then I was just all of a sudden somebody that was smaller than me last year is bigger than me now, and they take my spot. And so by the end of my 8th grade year, the only place you can put a guy like me is at right guard, and that's on the offensive line. So I was smaller than everybody else, and they just stuck me on the offensive line because they didn't know what else to do with me. I turned out, and so anyways, it's kind of like a sad situation. I remember going to every single practice, practicing as hard as I could, playing as hard as I could, and when it was time to install a new defense, I was like, I'll be out there. Put me at linebacker. It's like, I'm looking for somebody with a little more size. I could just eat a lot more, I guess. But anyway, so this was most of my 8th grade year playing football, and you can feel sorry for me. It's okay. It was hard. We were actually a pretty good team, and so I think part of the reason why I didn't get a lot of playing time is because all of our games were like fairly competitive, and it mattered what happened out there. And so anyways, end of the season, we're at this regional championship. We're playing a team who all year long we heard was the best in the state, 8th grade football. And they were stronger than everybody else. They were bigger than everybody else, and they were gonna. But we'd never lost all year either. And so we kind of were like really. The guys that played were like really also strong and big. And I remember getting on this bus and getting off the bus, and like everybody's like, you know, like that like, I don't know, it's bad smelling kids in these football uniforms just hyped, you know. And about halfway through the first quarter, we realized we were way outgunned. And our star linebacker, who was just like an animal, got like concussed. And so he was they took him off the field, and like as he was coming off, you could just it was like our hopes. With Mike McCormick on a backboard. And so come the middle of like the third quarter, the second team offensive line gets to go in, and don't worry, that wasn't me. And then towards the middle of the fourth quarter, they're like, okay, now they called them the second string B. So 2B could go on, third string. And I walked to the guy who's on the second team, and I said, don't worry about it. I'm not trying to get these pity minutes. I have some pride. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, nobody will notice. Like, okay. So he goes out there, plays it would have been 2 series. And so I never got to play in the game. It's kind of my own fault. But in my defense, nobody noticed. And so I was getting on the bus, and I was like, man, I was sitting there on the way home. And now this is before we had cell phones, so I couldn't just like distract myself from feeling. I had to feel this. For the hour and 45-minute bus ride home with all my other teammates who are mad because they lost. I'm mad for a totally different reason. Because for me, it didn't matter whether I was on the team, whether I made the trip. I mean, I didn't even play on scout team offense or defense that whole season. And it was this super confusing feeling like it just didn't matter. If I never showed up, If I never put on a jersey, if I never came to practice, nobody ever would have noticed. And I think that's like a really hard thing to feel. And I wonder if we ever feel like that still. And that the football thing turned out okay. I ended up playing in high school, and I did pretty well. I grew into my size, and I did pretty well. I got to play running back again, and anyways, I got to play in some important games again. So it's not like the story didn't end there, and your story doesn't have to end. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that thing. Okay. Anyways, I think I still remember that moment more than most of the moments I have from when I was in 8th grade or middle school in general. I remember sitting on that bus, pads off, just kind of like sitting there super, And I think it was because that feeling that, man, I think probably nobody noticed. I think probably nobody cared, and it wouldn't have mattered. And first, if I want to let you know that if you ever feel like that, and I know that it's probably more of us than we'd ever like to admit, if you ever feel like, man, it wouldn't matter if I got out of bed today, it wouldn't matter if I went to work today, or if it wouldn't matter if I showed up to church today, it wouldn't matter if I never called my friends again, they wouldn't miss me, it wouldn't matter if that just feeling of insignificance, like the universe is too big, other people have more important things to do than me, and that just kind of, if I just faded away, I'd be fine. Nobody would notice and nobody would care. I want to just tell you, that's absolutely not true. That you matter, that we love you. But more than that, more than the we love you from the pastor, I want to share with you today that that God in heaven, and this can be a trite saying, oh, God notices, or this can be a thing that changes the trajectory of your life, changes the way you think about yourself, and changes the way you think about other people, if we can internalize the fact that it all matters. It all matters. Would you guys pray with me as we get started? God, we love you so much. We're thankful for the time we get to spend together with you and before your word and with our family. And we pray that today would be transformative and that we could leave here just a little bit different. In your name, amen. Amen. Awesome. I'm the best at that. Thank you. I feel good anyways. I mean, maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your job. Maybe you go and nobody ever notices what I do. I come in a couple hours early. I stay a couple hours late. If I didn't do Joe's work for him, it would never get done. Or you just feel like nobody notices. No matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you do. Nobody ever notices. Maybe it's at home. I don't know if you guys saw this commercial. There's like a commercial where this guy, his wife is stressed out because she's always doing laundry and she's always cleaning up after him. And he goes, I have a secret for you. It's magical. Anything you put on this coffee table, by the morning, magically disappears. It's clean and back in the cupboard. She's like, are you serious right now? And he says, yeah, and there's a magical basket that does the same thing for your clothes. I don't know if you've ever felt like that woman where you're at home and you're just working, I do so much here, and then all that gets brought up is the stuff that you didn't do. Nobody ever notices. She doesn't notice. He doesn't notice. Or maybe even here at the church. Maybe I come and I serve, and I'm here every week. I give faithfully. I do all this stuff, and I feel like nobody ever notices. I really pray that's not the case. It's a goal of mine to make sure everybody knows how much we appreciate everything that you do and how much it matters, not just to us and not just to the rest of the people that are coming. I think it matters really, really much to God. He really does notice and see, and I want you guys to know that, and I pray that you never feel unappreciated, but I would be surprised if nobody ever felt unappreciated. It's kind of like it's a pretty quick emotion for us to get to, is that, well, they don't appreciate me. They just kind of do that, and I promise you're appreciated. but it's easy to feel unappreciated and like nobody notices. Or I spent extra care today setting up this thing, and nobody noticed. Everybody walks right past it like they do every week. And I want you to know that it may be true in your life that people don't notice you. It may be true that you're underappreciated. It's probably true that you're underappreciated. That's in some place in your life. It may be true that people don't notice. But there's one who notices and knows all of it. Every single thing, every movement of your heart. Every act of service, to the point where Jesus says, don't let people see it. The reward is better later if nobody else notices. See, we have this concept where we need to be noticed, but Jesus said, don't be noticed. Hide it all. You'll be amazed at what comes to you in God's hand on your life, his favor, and then even more importantly, in the age to come. You'll be amazed if you hide all that right now. Hide the service, hide the giving, hide all the prayers you're praying. Don't always call and be like, I've been praying for you every day this week. I prayed for you for an hour. Tell me how much your life is better because I prayed for you. Pray it in secret. Sometimes share. I'm not saying don't ever share. I'm like, hey, text people, hey, praying for you today. When I feel like whatever. When I feel like I need that validation. Just kidding. Kind of kidding. That was a nervous laugh. So was that. Anyways, all right. Awkward. I want to tell you a story about a guy who was very wealthy by the standard of his day. He had everything going for him. He would have been like a party guy, had a lot of experience. His name is Zacchaeus. Heard somebody pronounce his name Zacchaeus this week, and I was like, what? Zacchaeus? I guess it's spelled Zacchaeus or Zacchaeus. You can pick. I would go with Zacchaeus, like the rest of us. Anyways, say what you want. The story's from Luke 19. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region and had become very rich. So the idea behind a tax collector here is that you're basically a trader. So when Rome would take over an era, they would kind of an area, they would co-opt some of the people living there to be tax collectors because they knew way more about the way the economy worked and how money was spent and how they would have hidden it, whatever. They just understood it. Where if somebody was to come in from Rome and be like, I need your tax money, they'd be like, we don't make money, you know. So this person like knew and understood, and so they would take them, and then they would make them very rich. So they would be more loyal to Rome than they would have been to their old people. So they see these people as traders. So a tax collector would have been a trader. So a chief tax collector would have been a chief trader. And the way that tax collectors were made very rich is if somebody owed, $20 in taxes this week, the tax collector would come and say, you owe me $25 in taxes this week. They'd keep $5 plus their wages and then give the rest to Rome. And so not only are they now working for Rome against their own people, they're stealing from their own people for their own money. And this is Zacchaeus' life. You can see maybe why nobody really liked him, except for the kind of people who would hang around him for his money. I think Zacchaeus' life ended up being very empty because it's not often the things. Zacchaeus probably was like, once I get this money, I'll be happy. It's cool, nobody here will like me, but I'll be a tax collector, then I'll be rich, and I'll have everything I ever wanted. Generally, when we tie our hope to, we'll have everything we ever wanted, the next thing that we can get, or once I finally move into this house, or when we finally have kids, or when I finally get married, when we tie our happiness to a thing, a place, a time, that thing, place, or time, it never can fill your happiness. You'll still be thirsty, if that makes sense. You'll still be hungry. You'll still have something in your life that is unfulfilled. If we're like, maybe if I finally have everything I've always wanted, then I will be happy because it just never works that way. And Zacchaeus found that out a little bit the hard way, and probably had a little bit of a Napoleon complex as well, because he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. He said, Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. I want you, people who don't like, what is he doing? Why are they all clapping when he's drinking water? That's not that hard. I can drink water. I want you to leave here knowing that God sees everything. I did a little bit of digging. Not a lot of people in the gospel stories are mentioned by name. So he'll say he came upon a woman. The woman had a disease of bleeding, and then he healed her, and then the woman's name is kind of left out of the story, and that happens sort of a lot. And but every once in a while they say the name of the person, and he makes sure to say the name of this person kind of a lot through this story. And when the Bible was written, it wasn't typed up, it wasn't just spoken at Siri. There was a lot of things that went into it. It was very expensive to produce anything written, and so when you see a long word like Zacchaeus, sort of a lot in a short passage, we're probably learning, the writer, in this case Luke, who's incredibly detail-oriented, he's a doctor, and he tells the story in chronological order for those of us who we need that. And we get to this, and he says, Zacchaeus, 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 come down, Zacchaeus. It's like a lot. It's like, why? The name Zacchaeus means pure one. Isn't that interesting? It'd be like, pure one, Jesus, calling out to this guy who's basically a dirty, rotten traitor against his own people, kind of living the crazy life, doing whatever he wants. Not just a tax collector, but like the boss of the tax collectors, like kind of the Jericho mob boss type figure. And he says, pure one, come on down. I have to eat tonight with the pure one. And then it's interesting, everybody else sees that Zacchaeus is a notorious sinner from verse 7, but Jesus calls him by his name. He calls him the pure one. There's something about your heart that Jesus sees, that he loves, and that he wants, because he sees it. Jesus saw Zacchaeus not only in the tree, he saw him after dinner. Whether like no matter what happens at dinner, he saw him after dinner. So the rest of the story, I forgot to put it in the slides. It's super interesting because it just says he went to dinner with Jesus, and then after dinner he says, I'm going to give back everything I've stolen up to 4 times. I'll never cheat anyone else again. We don't see what happens in there. We just know he spent some time with Jesus. And I think Jesus understands something, that no matter what you're like in the tree, no matter what he saw in Zacchaeus in the tree, when he's after dinner is where Jesus saw him. And we have this tendency to define ourselves by our failures. We do this across the board. LeBron James is probably one of the best basketball players to ever live. I'm not going to have that discussion here and now today, except for he is. But everybody's like, he can't finish in the finals. You can't define a guy by what he didn't do. And there's some people, Jordan never lost in the finals. I'm not going to have the conversation about the teams that Jordan played in the finals. I'm not going to do it, not today. He beat Malone and Stockton, and that's it. I just don't think you should judge somebody by but we do. We like to. We like to say, this is what's wrong with you. You're a notorious sinner, but Jesus, rather than seeing the dark, he sees what could be in the light if he could get his hands on it. So he's like, if I could get him over for dinner, if I could fill him with life, if I could get into a relationship with Zacchaeus, I can see him as more. I can see him as more than this little old chief sinner. I can see him as the pure one. And I want to think about, like, as you see yourself in your life, I want to let you know that Jesus sees you as the pure one. we have this tendency that though I failed, now I'm a failure. Philip Rivers is a football player. He plays quarterback for the Chargers. And thanks for the help. And he's a Christian. He's a phenomenal person. And he has this saying, and I'm going to murder it if I try to say it in Latin, so I'm not going to. It's nunc chibi something. But what it means is, now I begin. And he was telling this to a sports reporter, and I just thought it was really cool because he's got T-shirts, he's painted on their locker room, he tells it to his kids all the time, says, now I begin. Not in the sense it's that, like, I'm starting over now, like I'm going to start a bunch of new things. He says, rather than, like, whatever happened, I threw a touchdown, we won the division, my kids, whatever, now I begin. Whether I've had 3 touchdowns or 3 interceptions, now I begin. Now is the new play. Now is the new play. Now I begin. And we need to be really like that with our Christian faith, because none of us are walking right now in the fullness of what God has for us. We make mistakes sometimes. I'm not saying that you're just doomed to make a bunch of mistakes. What I'm saying is, like, when you make a mistake, don't make it again. Don't let it continue to define you. Step out of it. Now I begin. You're not doomed to a cycle. We're free from the cycle. In Christ, we get to now I begin. And so often we let ourselves be defined by our failure. But God not only sees the failure, he does, but he sees the future. If he could get his hands on it, if he could get you out of the tree and he could get you over for dinner. I want you to leave here knowing that God sees it all. And for some people, this is a little creepy. Like he's watching me all the time. Yeah, but it's not creepy. You can't just say it's not creepy. I'll prove it. God has this way of knowing us so intimately. It's a little like I don't want anybody to know me like that, but you don't get a choice. He knows and he sees and he is close to us in this way that is super comforting for us. Because my biggest fear in relationship is if I let people come too close, they're going to get disgusted because I know me. I know the mistakes I make. Maybe you know you. I know the mistakes I've made. I know the thoughts I think. I know the stuff I shouldn't do. I know the way I act when nobody's around and I'm super frustrated. And I think that if anybody got that close to me, that they'd push me away. They'd be like, oh. Well, the good news is that Jesus is that close to you. He has seen it all. And he's not pushed you away. He's decided to put on flesh and come down to planet Earth and live his life in a perfect way to show you the pattern and to die his death in your place so you could have a way and have a life with him again. He chased you from heaven to earth through the grave to be with you, knowing everything that you've done, knowing who you are at the core level. He didn't push you away because he knew you. He got close to you because he knew you. What he sees, he likes, and it all matters. It's easy to believe that your pain doesn't matter to anyone. Like for Zacchaeus, I'm sure the people that he'd surrounded himself with who liked him for his money, had he gone and tried to have that conversation, like, I just kind of feel empty in all of this. Like, what are you talking about? Let's have another drink. No, I don't feel like this life is very fulfilling. What are you talking about? We're having a great time. Come on, drink up. Like, shoot, maybe there is nobody in my life that I can talk to this about. Maybe my pain doesn't matter to anybody. And maybe if we have this thing, like if I start to share my pain with people, they'll push me away. They don't want to be around a complainer. They don't want to be about somebody that's... First of all, I want to tell you that's not true. We are called as Christians, and it's our joy as your family to walk through hard things with you. If family isn't for hard times, what's it for? We want to walk through this with you. But more importantly, every pain you feel matters to God. Imagine the emptiness in Zacchaeus' life. Now he's a traitor to his own people. He'll never be fully Roman. Just kind of stuck in the middle. Nobody really likes him. Rome needs him, so they pay him. The Jews have like pushed him apart, pushed him away. He's got tax collectors under him who are trying to become the chief tax collector. He's kind of sitting here by himself with all of his money and all the people who want his money. Just imagine that. But Jesus saw him while he was on the tree. Jericho, the streets of Jericho that day were so flooded, he couldn't get a front row seat. He had to climb a tree to see it. And in the midst of so many other people, Jesus saw Zacchaeus. And I want to tell you, if you feel like, man, God's got so much to do, how could he ever notice me? He notices and sees you. The same way that in this crowd of people, Jesus looked up and saw Zacchaeus, the least likely one, the one that everybody's going to get mad that he's spending his time with Zacchaeus. He found him, and he sought him out, and he's the same for you. Nobody sees my pain. Nobody feels Jesus notices, and he sees it, and that really matters. Every private victory. I'm driving by myself, and I was going to flip that guy off, but I didn't. And I was like, the grace of God in my life, and he's like, so proud of you. Like, really. And it's a little funny, but in those little victories, like when you got that perfect thing that you know is just going to push your wife's buttons, and you just are going to get it, and you're going to win the argument, you're going to shut it down. I mean, she's going to feel like small, and she's going to it's going to create a divide, but it's going to prove your point, and you're going to be right. And you just don't say it, and you apologize instead, and you're the only one who knows the victory you had in that moment. It matters so much to God. It matters. He's so proud of you. Because he knows the pattern you've been on. He knows the thoughts. He knows how everything goes. And he said, way to go, man. You're the only one who knows you got up every day this week to read your Bible and spend time with Jesus. You're the only one who knows, because you can't tell anybody, like, I'm really good, because then you kind of lose it all and it's just a big mess. And he's really proud of you. It matters. Every move of your heart towards God matters. All Zacchaeus had to do was climb a tree. That was enough for Jesus to see the desire in his heart. You guys can come on up. In the Psalms, it says that Jesus has collected our tears in a bottle. So easy for us to think that we're crying alone, but Jesus is noticing every single thing that's happened. Not only is he noticing, like, oh, I've seen that. He's like caring enough to insert himself into that situation and hear and feel with us and stand with us and be with us. We do not have a God that is far. This is one of the biggest mental blocks we have to get over as Christians, as people who are trying to live close to Jesus. We have to really start to understand that Jesus is not far. He's not waiting till you get it right. He's not mostly disappointed in our performance. He is moved at the core level with every turn of our heart to him. Every time we climb a tree, Jesus is there to say it's time for dinner. Those little movements, those little moments, those things that we, rather than just rush into that meeting, we took a second to say, God, help me with this meeting. He's like, in his spirit, he's like, yes, absolutely, I will. I'm so glad to be a part of this meeting with you. The thing that's on God's heart is a relationship with you, period. That's what's on his heart. That's what he wants. So when our hearts turn to him, he's like, yes, I love this. We think of our relationship and our religion, and we think of all this stuff in terms of this like cosmic deal where we're like, if I just do the right things and I say the right prayers and I read the right verses and I go to enough church services, then finally God will be happy with my life and he'll bless me. There's no better blessing than to live with God. Why? How do we know that? Because it's what he wants. From the very, very beginning, God, the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son, they're kind of all together, one separate, this thing, and this perfect relationship of love. And they decided that the thing that they were missing, the thing that would just please them the most, was to have a you. And so they made you, your purpose is to be with God to love like he loves, to be part of that family, to be part of that thing. That's why we were made. So everything we do that moves us towards that just pleases God's heart, because he didn't want robots. He didn't just create a bunch of people who would just do exactly as he asked. He wanted it to be voluntary love, because it's not love if it's not voluntary. It's called Stockholm Syndrome. Every move, that it all matters. And so we talk about this road that we're on. We're on our way to him. We're on a journey to go be with him. It's this right here that can make all the difference. We got to know the him we're going to. If we stay connected to him, man, nothing here matters, because you will be undervalued. I promise. In your marriage, your kids aren't going to love you the way they should. They're not going to know all that you did for them until they have kids. And you'll be like, that's right. I hope they're brats just like you were. Except when it comes to grandma time. The way that we live for heaven, stay connected to that, is to stay connected to him, because he cares. It all matters. Every prayer, every pain, every conversation, it all matters. Every time you come to church, you set up early and nobody noticed, and you came here right on time and the trailer was 10 minutes late. Now they don't even, I should just show up everything 10 minutes. They don't even care about my Somebody notices, God sees, God cares. Every single thing, that fight that you didn't get into today, God sees it and he cares. Everything that moves every movement of our heart towards him. When we stand here, we sing to Jesus. Can you imagine what that does to his heart? We've got a God who loves us, is very, very interested in being very, very close to us. And the cool news is he knows you already. So letting him closer isn't a risk. It's not like, well, maybe he'll find some stuff he doesn't like. Oh, he already seen all the stuff that you think he won't like. And he's like, I can fix that if I can have your heart. Isaiah, the prophet, is talking about, he's talking to the nation of Israel, who he loves very much, and they were kind of his chosen people, the ones that he chose to bring the Messiah through, and he shows his dedication to us as people through his dedication to the nation Israel. And so God says through Isaiah, he says, can a mother forget her nursing child? Can she feel no love for a child she has born? Even if that were possible, I would never forget you. See, I have engraved your name on the palms of my hands. We didn't really know what this meant for a long time. I didn't know what it meant. Maybe there was a thing I didn't know. But after Jesus had died and the disciples were sitting around, Jesus came to visit them. Kind of walks through a wall. It's a little like, weird, God. But then there was one guy who wasn't there. Thomas wasn't there. And so Jesus leaves, and Thomas comes back, and he says, I won't unless I can touch his hands and put my hand in the hole in his side. I won't believe that he's back. When Jesus comes back, resurrected Jesus, how he'll sit in eternity, the way he comes up and he puts his hands in the holes in Jesus' hands. And it's this beautiful moment that says, see, I haven't forgotten you. When Jesus went to die, he came back from the dead to bring us with him. Not only did he defeat death, he defeated death for us. Because even in that incredibly difficult moment, he didn't forget us. Can a mother forget her nursing child? We think about the love that we have for our children. Think so much more about the God who created you, whose idea it was that you would look like you look and have the gifts that you have and be who you are, just so he could love everything about you. We forget how much God cares about his children. Even if it were possible that a mom could, He would never forget us. Would you guys stand with me? I think this is such a transformational idea, such a powerful idea that the God of the universe knows us and he accepts us and pulls us closer and desires to fix us. Not only does he love us and like us, but he's willing to put in the work that it takes to help us change.